Grande o céu, olhar pro céu, 1000 estrelas que vão. Olha pra mim, que sozinho vou também. Eu que não nasci pra sofrer, que não pedi pra gostar de você. Olha no céu, uma estrela que cai, riscando o azul. Grande é o céu, um abismo de luz. Se grande é o céu, maior é meu amor. Vejo o céu infinito que brilha em teus olhos. Pra sofrer, que não pedi pra gostar de você. Olha no céu, uma estrela que cai, arriscado azul. Grande é o céu, um abismo de luz. Se grande é o céu, maior é meu amor. Existe o céu infinito que brilha em teus olhos. E existe o céu infinito que brilha dos teus olhos. E existe o céu infinito que brilha em teus olhos.
Thank you, and welcome to the concert this evening, honoring the Brazilian composer, Jobim. We're celebrating his music and his life. We're celebrating his life. And that first song is sung by Volpintesta. Feel free to applaud.
Still low.
Olha pro céu.
Yeah, that was Look to the. I'm sorry, that was Look to the Sky. One of Jobim's, one of the 500 songs he wrote in his lifetime. And Jobim was an early environmentalist. He was very concerned about nature and Brazil's natural resources when other people weren't. In an interview one time, I remember reading that, you know, as a child, as a teenager, he was a typical karaoke, somebody who lived in Rio de Janeiro. And he said he would play with his friends, and like most karaokes, he would go to the beach every day in Copacabana. And he said the sand, when he went on the beach, the sand would sing. When I read that, it was in Portuguese. I didn't quite understand it. I wasn't sure if I was translating it. It's like, what does that mean? The sand would sing. And I studied it, and I talked to somebody who spoke fluent Portuguese, and he said, yeah, he said the sand would sing because when he was a teenager, the sand in the beach at Copacabana was clean and pure. And as he walked on it, it made sound. Shh. So Jobim, the musician, said the sand is singing. He said as an adult, the sand wasn't singing anymore. Sand was dirty. Tourism happened. Dredging of the beaches happened. They were expanding the beach area, things like that. He says, no more singing of the sand. And he lamented that. So this song is look to the sky, look to the nature, look to the beautiful sky in Rio, the beautiful sky in Connecticut, wherever you might be. This next song, we are joined by two other musicians. We have Graciliano Zambonin on drums. And my good friend for many years, we've done a lot of things together, Harvie S on bass. This is Jobim's song, Brigas, Mais, which means no more fighting. Please, no more fighting. Very appropriate. When my three boys were young and small, I used to dedicate this song to them. Please, no more fighting. It was always who could get to the car first, who could get their seatbelt on first, who could finish their meal first. No more fighting. This is Brigas, Nunca. We'll be back later on in the program. Now we'd like to play a song. Out of the, as I mentioned a few moments ago, Jobim wrote 500 songs in his lifetime. And he only wrote out of those 500 about a half a dozen that were in 3/4 time. Instead of 1, 2, 1, 2. Now they're 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So because he wrote very few songs in 3/4 time, they usually remain kind of special for me. This is his song, Luciana. In doing my research on this song, I wanted to know who Luciana was. And I had a hard time finding out. Jobim used to say that he wrote songs sometimes for women who he knew he would never have any kind of entanglement or affair with. Just he wrote music for women. And he wrote a song for an actress one time, Candace Bergen. He wrote a song for his children's math teacher because he admired her. This Luciana, again, remains a mystery, although I found out that his partner, the one who wrote the lyrics to the music, had a sister named Luciana, so maybe this was for her. Either way, this is our version of Luciana in 3/4 time. It's one of his more obscure tunes, not as well known as some of his others, obviously. Written in the late 1950s, which was a nice period of writing for him. It was before he became famous with a big hit song you might have heard in your lifetime, or my students, your grandparents might have heard it. It was a song called, what's it called? So that's The Girl from Ipanema, which was a phenomenal hit for Jobim. In his career, it's before, this is the dividing line, in my opinion, for his career. He wrote music, some great music before and some great music after Ipanema. This was before. This is Luciana. And this one I don't know so well, so I have to actually read the music for this one. At this point now, we'd like to bring out who I affectionately call the tallest harmonica player in the world. Who just happens to be a professor here at Sacred Heart University. We'd like to bring out Professor Hendrik Meurkens on harmonica. This next song is a song called Discussao, which translates to discussion. Again, written in that period of the late 1950s for Jobim. We went over this song in rehearsal this afternoon, and we all turned to each other and said, how do you write a perfect song like that? The structure is just perfect. If Laura was going to sing the words and she translated the words, you'd understand that the words are like poetry, and the music itself just fits perfectly with the words and vice versa. This is one of my favorite, although I might say that a few times, this is one of my favorite Jobim tunes. Hendrik and I have performed this a few times in various situations, and we will continue to perform it tonight in this situation. we're getting somewhere. So allow me to tune up a little bit. And our next song is Umoro Now Te Vez, which is Lament in the Hills. The hills refers to the favelas in Rio, areas where the poor people live. And the lament is the cry of the people in the hills. This song, in our arrangement, the song features a very distinctive rhythm. It actually has two rhythms. The first one, you'll hear it, is called Partido Alto. And then it goes into samba rhythm. Try to hear the difference between, I'm talking like you're in my class. Try to hear the difference between the two rhythms if you can. I love Partido Alto rhythm because everybody works together in sync. Guitar has one thing going on, bass has something else, drums have something else, and it all comes together in this very distinctive rhythm. I was going to say there'd be a quiz later, but not really. In 1972, there was a classic Brazilian recording made. And it had the first names of the two artists. It was a collaboration. It had the first names of the two artists on the cover, and that's all that was needed. Everyone knew exactly who these people were. It was called Elise e Tom. Elise Regina, the singer, and Tom Jobim, Antonio Carlos Jobim. Tom Jobim wrote the words, he wrote the music, the songs, and Elise sang them, and they collaborated together. They used a group of musicians, and Jobim played the piano on the recording. And as I said, Elise sang the songs. This album became a classic. It's still a classic. I remember when it switched from 1999 to 2000, the new millennium, there was all these lists, the 100 greatest books ever written, the 100 greatest this, the 100 greatest that, of the last century. On the 100 greatest Brazilian records made in the 20th century, this was up there in the top 3, I believe. We're going to play one of the songs from that recording. It's called Fotografia, which translates to photograph. And another classic Jobim song, and I'm just going to play it for you. I have nothing else to say about it. Well, I got good news and I got bad news for you. So, the bad news is we only have one more song left. I know, we only know 7 songs, that's it. The good news is we're gonna bring back Hendrik Meurkens and Volpintesta for this. Whoa! I didn't know we were doing costume changes. So this is the first time we are performing here at the SHU Community Theater, and as I told my students the other day, this place is so old that I used to come here as a kid and watch movies. That's how old this place is. Those black and white silent movies. So we're happy to be here, and we could have been treated better, by Matt, the theater manager, by Tim and Rob, the sound guys who gave us this great sound, by Maureen, the hospitality queen who hooked us up with dinner and everything else. This is a great place. I suggest, it's only a suggestion, but on your way out, pick up the scheduled events. There's a lot of things going on here. I'd also like to thank you all for coming. I know for my students it's a little bit of an effort, but I appreciate you coming here. And to reward you, when we're done, there'll be some attendance sheets on the edge of the stage that you can sign. Maybe some extra credits coming your way. On behalf of, and feel free to applaud, on behalf of Volpintesta on vocal, and from Brazil, direct from Brazil, Graciliano Zambonin on drums. My good buddy and long-lasting buddy, Mr. Harvie S on the acoustic bass. I was going to say that lame joke about the tallest harmonica player, but I'm not going to do that. Mr. Hendrik Meurkens on harmonica. I'd like to thank you for coming out tonight, and we're going to finish with a song that was actually the first Jobim song I ever learned. And through the years, I have some friends. I know it's hard to believe, but I actually have some friends. And it's a husband and wife, and the wife has been, they've been coming to my concerts and gigs for a long time. They might even be here tonight, I don't know. But this song is her favorite song, and when she first asked me to play this song, she would say, can you do that song? I'm like, which song? She said, I'm like, what? What is that? And she said, So we're going to play this song. It's entitled Wave. And once again, thank you for coming out, and let's do it, everybody.
Vou te contar, os olhos já não podem ver, mas acho que só o coração pode entender. Fundamental é mesmo amor, é impossível ser feliz sozinho. O resto é mal, tudo que nem sei contar. São coisas lindas que eu tenho pra te dar. É impossível ser feliz sozinho. A primeira vez era a cidade, a segunda o cais da eternidade. Agora eu já sei onde quis ser que do mar e das estrelas que
Hendrik, Harvie, and Jill Kelly.